Hey guys, this is Keiko 2000. As you can see, we have a little different setup. This is mainly where we're going to be recording now. I'm actually in my living room, and there's just better lighting and everything. I want to get the best quality for you guys, so you may see the light in the background. I'll try to fix that and face it more this way next time, but for now, this is how we're going to be doing Book Talk with Keiko. And it's, a lot more comfortable. I actually have my water over there. Hold on, let me get that real quick. I'm just on a couch instead of like a chair because my original chair got broken. So I had to use that hard metal chair that you guys have been seeing me on that creaks a lot. And this is just a nice comfortable couch. And I don't sit in here enough, so this is going to be me sitting in here there's like a different table, so I could even do like a talk show. Alright, let's start reading. So you may occasionally hear some people, so this probably is going to be edited, maybe. We're starting a new book. We didn't finish the other one. We're still going to be reading that, but for now, we're going to be reading Flight to Freedom. You guys can see that here. And it's by Henrietta Buckmaster, The Story of the Underground Railroad, and a picture should be popping up now of the book cover, or just here. But if I remember, a thing will pop up. Alright, Flight to Freedom, The Story of the Underground Railroad. Alright, let's do this. For Nancy, with my love. Yeah, okay. For Nancy, with my love. Chapter 1. One hot day in 1850, a man staggered out of the woods, looked about him to get his bearings, and plunged down a lane toward the river. He had only a few moments of freedom before he heard the baying of hounds, but those few minutes was all he needed to splash up his knees in the shallow stream and wade, half crouching under the willow trees, then turn swiftly in the opposite direction. At length he submerged himself in the water, breathing through a hollow reed he held in his hands. The dogs tried desperately to pick up the scent, but the water had destroyed it. Since the man had created a false scent before doubling back on his tracks, the shouting men and the milling dogs raced up the stream in the opposite direction. And I also wanted to say real quick before I keep reading, this is a nonfiction book, so this is all real. After a safe interval, the man scrambled up the bank and sat panting and shaking with nerves. He knew he had no time to waste. Growing dark, and the darkness would help him. He waded across the stream and ran, crouching through the cornfields until he reached a footpath. The only guide he had was the North Star. The only friend he could trust in the whole world was himself. Yet his skin was black, and this fact might betray him. The man was a fugitive slave, and the entire law was arrayed against him. The roads were patrolled by armed men on horseback who kept a watch for such as he. Patrols shot first and asked questions second. The North Star was his hope. North. Keep going north, and eventually, if you do not die, you will find freedom. The man had had the nails of one foot torn out because he tried to run away before. The toes ached now, but he scarcely felt the pain. All night he stumbled through underbrush, ran along the side of the road. When he saw the first light of dawn, he drew some water from a well. Before he could lower the bucket again, a voice whispered, "What are you doing? What do you want?" For answer, he struck out his fist, not even waiting to learn whether the questioner was white or Negro. "Wait, you're a fool," the voice said more urgently. "You can't get away in the daytime. Lay over. I'll get you some breakfast." The voice belonged to a black man. Those two who crouched by the wall, looking at each other, were both slaves. They understood without further words. The runaway, we'll call him Jeb, spent the day hidden in the unused pig pen in the woods. He ate and slept. At night, his friend brought him some back and cornbread and showed him a short cut through the woods. He could not tell Jeb how far he was from the north. Only Jeb's torn and exhausted feet and fear could give him any sense of distance. For another 10 days, Jeb lived in deadly danger. He existed as best as he could. He once ate poisonous berries and nearly died with no one to help. The next day, he crept on a bare 2 miles, but he was not defeated. His pants were torn, his shirt was frayed. A slave gave him a better pair of pants. A woman flung him a coat, a white woman. Another white woman saw him in the field, ducking down behind a wall. She had her hand in a bowl of table scraps for chickens. She put the bowl on the wall and called softly, "Come and get it." A slave told him he was in Kentucky, close to the Ohio River. He almost fainted. Get across the river, and he'd be in the promised land. Almost. Swim, his black friend told him. Ain't hard. Fix to the cross at the Ripley, and you'll see the light burn on a hill. That's friends. You won't have to worry no more. Jeb came to the river at twilight. Nothing ever looked so wide or so wet. Hiding in the bushes, he stared at the river, and then he lifted his eyes to the hills. He continued to stare at the hills. With the first darkness, a light flickered high on the crest of the hill. A friend or decoy. He took the risk and slipped into the water. For a man who was weak and exhausted, it was hard to swim. When he climbed out on the other bank, he did not know whether he would be able to climb the hill. Over and over, he repeated to himself, "Freedom, freedom, freedom." It was the most beautiful sound in the world. In the state of Ohio, where no slaves whips, no slave shackles, no slave men. It gave Jeb strength. He climbed the steep road, and he stood for a moment by the garden gate, looking south across the flowing river. He'd never go back. The family who lived beyond the garden gate was named Rankin. 7 tall sons and fathers were prepared at any time of the day or night to pass along a runaway. They passed this one along, but first they gave Jeb a meal, made him a bed of straw in the bottom of a wagon, and then, in the dead of night, a Rankin son hitched up the team and drove through the ruddy darkness to his home of a friend. The first was unsurprised and unprepared. Since it was now nearly dawn, he hid Jeb in his barn. But that night he hitched up his team and drove Jeb another 30 miles. In Canada lay the only true safety for a slave masters, and slave laws could reach into the north with a long arm. 5 more days of hazard and hardship, of tenderness, care, and brotherly love. And then the wide expanse of Lake Erie danced in the sunlight. Jeb was smuggled aboard a ship and hidden under shackles of grain. When he stepped off the ship, he was a free man. This was desire for freedom which sent more than 2,000 slaves out of the South every year. This was the Underground Railroad. Slavery, can't even say it, guys, had lain like a terrible sore on our country for 200 years. Many were ashamed of it. The black Africans who were enslaved fought against it from the start. Men like Thomas and Jefferson, preparing the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, tried to have slavery outlawed. It was well on its way to extinction when a machine was invented in the late 18th century, the cotton gin. The machine cleaned 500 pounds of cotton a day instead of 5 that a man can do by hands. To grow the cotton to feed the machine, plantation owners needed labor, cheap labor. That settled the fate of slavery. To abolish slavery meant to abolish profits which were astronomical, profits which were shared north and south. But not to abolish slavery struck at some of the deepest principles of Americans. For the next 60 years, until the crash of the Civil War, no issue was as important as slavery. It divided homes, it spoke for the conscience, it made political parties, it challenged religion, it turned men into brutes, and it turned men into heroes. It created the Underground Railroad. The first slave who helped a fellow slave to escape drove the first spike into the individual railroad. The unknown first fugitive, the softly stepping man and woman who dared the dangers of the swamp and mountains, and of cold and rain, the outstretched hands of friends, the disguisers, the courage, the gunshots along the border, and a long, invisible train, which chugged so silently and sent up such invisible smoke. All these provided, in the end, irresistible. It was they which really broke the chains of slavery. And that's chapter 1, guys. So, this book, I don't know how long it's taken since this was like the first reading, but I'm going to record right after this the next chapter and more. If you guys want this book for yourself, you could probably get it at your local library. Again, it's called Flight to Freedom by Heretta Buckmaster, Story of the Underground Railroad. And it was really interesting and captivating. It's only 208 pages, so this book shouldn't take too long to read. Again, we're still going to finish Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but I thought we'd move on to another book just in case you guys don't really like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And you can put suggestions for books down in the description down below. Maybe your book will be chosen, and I'll read it to you if you don't feel like reading it yourself. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and bye.